First, our reporter Tom Hartley joins me in Brisbane. Tom, can you start by telling us what's happening where you are?
Yeah, good evening, Sarah. We're in Morningside at the moment, and this is what last-minute preparations look like. We've basically been told us here in South East Queensland that tonight's really our last opportunity to get what we need to get into order. Have a look here. This is the long queue of cars that have been lining up. There's been hours-long wait here. But 400,000 sandbags have gone out across Brisbane City since Friday. That's 400,000. That's more than double the amount that went out during the 2022 floods. But that kind of gives you a sense of people's thinking about Tropical Cyclone Alfred. They really don't know what's in store. We see on the forecast hundreds of mils of rain, those strong winds you were just talking about. But where and how that's going to impact exactly, no one knows.
So, Tom, how do the emergency services prepare for something as broad and large as this?
Well, luckily here in Queensland, Sarah, emergency services are well rehearsed at cyclones. As we know, there was one just a few weeks ago up in far north Queensland. They've actually flown some of those experts down here to the southeast. They've got people positioned in all those vulnerable areas. They're good to go with hundreds of crews, thousands of volunteers. The SES, we've seen them busy at work today, door knocking, and the police as well, trying to get to those really vulnerable people in those vulnerable communities. The ones you were talking about where they're facing storm surges, they're facing those strong winds, and they're facing those flooding rains and the water coming up from underneath them.
We can already see the wind starting to pick up. But tell me, Tom, when you're speaking to people today, how are people feeling?
Yeah, Sarah, it's one of those things where it kind of depends who and who you ask and where you ask them. Some of the people that we've spoken to today, they've been through storms, right? People in South East Queensland, they know storms, they know floods, but when something like this, a cyclone that we haven't had for 51 years starts approaching, that's got a lot of people feeling jittery. We also spoke to some really vulnerable community members out at a couple of tent cities today, some in the homeless shelters as well. Those rough sleepers, they're the ones who are really doing it tough at the moment. They've got not much to hold on to, but they're really desperate, a lot of them, to protect that and to hold on to everything they can. Sarah, take a look.
Tanner Campbell isn't on holiday. This is his home and has been for the past 6 weeks.
I've been through some harsh winds, but, this one's going to sit on top of us.
He's one of more than 20 people sleeping rough at this park in Launton, north of Brisbane, all bracing for Tropical Cyclone Alfred. Tanner says he'll pack up when conditions get too rough.
If it gets too hectic, I'm not silly. I'll head to the Strathpine Community Centre and go there. I've got a life jacket for when I do have to walk on the street. And my boss said, worst case scenario, if I can't get there, give him a call, he'll come down in the ute and get me.
And what do you expect to come back to if you do leave?
Mate, I'm hoping it's still standing.
But he's about the only one in this park who's prepared to go.
Yeah, I think when you have nothing and the thought of losing what little you have kicks in, I think that's why they want to stay with their belongings. Once they've lost that, they've lost everything. They lose all hope.
However, charities and missions across the southeast are trying to keep up with an 11th hour influx.
We're just doing a triage centre here to work with people. Cyclones aren't something that Brisbane is used to, so people need a bit of education about how it's different to a flood and how it's so much more dangerous.
Shelters like Emmanuel's in Brisbane City are running on donations and goodwill. The people here, unbothered by the closed roads and the cancelled footy, they're more worried about where they'll go next.
We need people to really know that your tent isn't going to last.
At Morningside, people from across the community have collected thousands of sandbags. long waits for those hoping to protect their property.
I've been, waiting here just under like 3 hours or so, but want to make sure that if anything goes wrong, like we're all prepared.
In supermarkets, finding supplies is a mission itself.
We've got large bottles of water, pasta, noodles, all those kind of foods that don't require refrigeration, because we found that was an issue last time. The kids will not be pleased that there'll be no Wi-Fi.
Monique Hooper knows sandbagging won't stop floodwaters inundating her home in Rocklea.
So 2011, we flooded up to this point here. So all the walls had to be taken out, the cabinets, the shelving.
Yeah, the aircon stuffed.
It's one of the Brisbane suburbs at risk of flooding after the cyclone hits. It went under in the most recent floods.
Looks like they got water in their living areas.
We get the water views pretty frequently.
Her most prized possessions are going upstairs, but she and her family are preparing for serious damage on the bottom level.
We're quite tight on space. Things like the piano and large pieces of furniture will stay downstairs. We're used to it, yeah. Kind of tired of it, really. But I love this house. This is the house that I brought my babies back to, so when they're born. So I don't want to move, but at the same time, I know what we're going to experience, and I try not to get too attached to my possessions, because that's all they are. They're just possessions, and as long as we're safe, that's fine.
On the other side of Brisbane, 87-year-old Jack Street is also reflecting on what's important.
I brought me 2 boys up here, and we've lived here all the time.
Jack has lived here at Nudgee Beach on Brisbane's coast for 53 years, a suburb surrounded by mangroves and creeks and exposed to the elements. Both he and his 1920s timber home have seen the southeast's worst weather. This will be one of the first without his wife Marilyn.
We were married 58 years. She's been gone now 4 years, so here by myself.
As far as prep goes, he's put the important stuff up high, he's tied the deck chairs down.
There's a bit of white water coming out wide. It's starting to blow out there.
And now the 87-year-old's keeping an eye on the looming storm.
Yeah, she's going to be a bit lumpy.
While keeping an ear on developments.
Sandbags have been a real issue. Let us know what the wait time is like and whether you need to bring shovels to all of them.
Crazy.
Give us a text or a call.
While there's uncertainty about the severity of this tropical cyclone, Jack's sure his community will be nearby.
A bit jittery, naturally, but being here by myself, so yeah, so it's a bit worrying, but I've got good neighbours.
The window is closing for people to protect themselves further from the coming storm. I spoke to Queensland Premier David Crisafulli at the State Disaster Coordination Centre a short time ago. Premier, welcome to 7:30.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
Can you just describe to us the potential danger for the people of Queensland and northern New South Wales as the cyclone approaches?
It's a very serious threat, and we want Queenslanders to take it seriously. We want people to the south of the border to take it seriously, and I want Queenslanders and right across the country to know that we've done all the work, all the preparation, and it's important that you do the same. It's important that we look at this. These systems come in phases, so we've seen the coastal erosion. We're now entering that period where we will have dangerous winds. The system is currently about 300 kilometres off the coast. It is heading towards us. Now, models will vary as to when and exactly where, but one thing that everyone is certain of is that this will cross the coast as a cyclone, and it's been half a century since that occurred this far south. So it is a serious threat, but I do have every faith that we'll get through it. And after that is obviously the risk that comes with flooding, and this part of the country is not immune to that, so I've got every confidence that we'll deal with that.
And just in the period ahead, the next 24 hours, what happens to the cyclone as it passes over the warmer coastal water?
Well, we'll keep a really close eye on the model, and ultimately these things are never easy to predict. But as we get the information, we'll give it to Queenslanders. It's important that we do that. The system is likely to pass somewhere between the Sunshine Coast and the Gold Coast, and that will firm up as we see it in the days ahead. But there is the real risk, not just with the winds, but also the rain. Some of the predictions for rainfall are quite large, and that will bring about a challenge. So we're saying to people, get the information and have an evacuation plan. All of the councils have provided mapping about what those storm surges might look like. If the system was to cross on a high tide, that brings with it a real level of complexity. So we've got a disaster website, which is disaster.qld.gov.au, and all of the councils have their mapping on that. You just click on your local government and go to it. And what we're saying to people is, inform yourself with that information, make a clear plan, have an evacuation plan. If you are in one of those areas, the best place to be is with family or friends if you have that option available. The councils also have evacuation centres for those who don't have that option. If you're in a flood area, a known flood area, it's the same procedure you normally go through. To the vast majority of people, and I mean the vast majority who aren't in either of those zones, the safest place for you is in your home. But you've got to do the little things to make sure that it's fortified. And the window is closing, but you still have time to make sure that you clean the debris from around your yard and don't have things hanging over the top of the house, and get all of your possessions into a box, because if you do have to leave, it's really important to have that documentation, have tinned food, have water, have batteries for your phone, and stay connected. And if you stay connected, we will keep providing the information. And whilst it is challenging, I do have every faith that people will get through it. And in the end, human life is the most important thing.
Just tell me this, for those people in the most vulnerable areas to this cyclone, is your advice to them to stay where they are now, or should people still be looking for alternatives?
Well, they do have time, and the maps are out there, and coupled with that, the councils have worked with us and we've gone door knocking. There are text messages that have also gone out, and there is that website information. Now, that window will close. There'll come a time that window will close, and in the meantime, we're asking people to just inform yourself with all of those decisions, make a plan, and in the end, if in doubt, go and stay with friends and family. If you don't have that option, if you have the means, go to a hotel. If not, there are those evacuation centres, and that information is all there. But I want people to know we'll support them in whatever decision they make. And equally importantly, once we go from response to recovery, there can't be not one bit of daylight between them. We have to get cracking to make sure that we can pick people up after an event like this. We already have something in the order of 1,000 energy staff from Energex who are there waiting, with contractors to go in and clean the debris to reconnect those power. We've pre-positioned health staff. We've got generators on some of those vulnerable island communities. The telcos have generators in case they lose power to try and keep as much communication as possible. We've put a lot of thought into this. We've put a lot of preparation. I hope Queenslanders see that as a result of it, we are taking it seriously. And for those at home who are maybe a little in two minds about an event like this, I just say, just do the little things now, and it makes a world of difference at the other end.
And so you are confident that there are enough emergency resources already mobilised ahead of what comes in the early hours of Friday morning?
We have, and to give you an indication, we've even pre-positioned swift water rescue on some of those areas that are subject to storm tide inundation. I just make the point, though, the safest place for you, particularly if a system like this crosses in the middle of the night on a high tide, the last place you want to be is in a home if there's water being inundated. It's dangerous for you, but it's also dangerous for our staff, for those emergency services volunteers. So look, arm yourself with the information. The councils continue to update that on the website. Make a decision, have a plan, and we'll support you through it.
Now that's, I understand it's about 20,000 properties at risk of inundation is the number that people have been working with. You're saying that there are services in place for those people with those properties?
Every local government has outlined where those properties are, and they also have areas based on those storm tides, the potential for that inundation, and you can look at that and you can see it. Now, if you're not in one of those areas, that's the vast majority of people, you should stay at home, and if you do those preparations, that is the safest place for you. For those who might be impacted either by traditional river flooding, which many have experienced before, or by that storm surge, arm yourself with the information. People have gone and communicated that to people door to door, but there's also been, like I said, the information on the website, the text messages, all of those things that are important. Make an informed decision. And if in doubt, my message to you is put yourself and your family's safety first before everything else.
We're talking about wind gusts of up to 155 kilometres per hour. Do you have any concerns about the housing stock, particularly in Queensland, obviously, whether it can withstand those kinds of wind speeds?
There's always challenges when you have wind speeds like that, but the greatest challenge is often the debris. The greatest challenge is trees falling on power lines, loose items going through a window. If you secure your property and you make sure that you've got all of those essentials that I spoke about, your home is the safest place. And I want Queenslanders to know that, and we will respond. We'll respond swiftly. We don't want people who second-guessing that and leaving. There's also the complexity if you are in the eye of the cyclone, that you'll have a reprieve for a while. Don't go running out. We don't need people running around. What we need is everyone banding together. And my final message on that front is there's never been a better time to get to know your neighbour if you don't know them, or if there's somebody you do know, just share what you're doing. It's those little bits of information that make all the difference. And if you do that at the front end, the recovery is so much easier. We have a recovery going on at the other end of the state where some pretty resilient communities in North and Far North Queensland got hit by flood within the last month. That recovery continues, and we'll be doing it at both ends of the state. But we will get through it. We're a pretty resilient bunch.
Premier, we know you'll get through it, but in the meantime, we're thinking about you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Sincerely grateful for your interest, and thanks very much for sharing the message.
And for the latest up-to-date information on what's happening in your area, you should tune into your local ABC radio station on a battery-powered radio, or visit abc.net.au/emergency. Now, the southern flank of a cyclone typically experiences the worst of its impacts. That's exactly where the Gold Coast sits. Donna Gates is the Gold Coast acting mayor. I spoke with her earlier. Donna Gates, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Pleasure.
Can you explain to us, first of all, why the risk for the Gold Coast is so elevated?
Most of the modelling, Sarah, indicates that the cyclone will cross the coast north of the Gold Coast, and that we will experience the intensity of the winds from the south of the cyclone, which will be much stronger for areas just below it.
I've got a lot of practical questions to ask you, but I just wanted to ask, bearing that in mind, are you afraid?
I said yesterday this is a very scary event. It's not unprecedented, but it is unusual. The last one was 74 and the one comparable was 1954. So it's a long time since we've had one in this region, but fortunately we've had the time to prepare. So we've been giving warnings to the community now for almost a week, and everyone is as well prepared as we possibly could be.
I want to ask you about what people should do and what sort of decisions they should make right now with 24 hours still to go. If people are worried about their homes, should they be leaving and going to friends or an evacuation centre?
Yes, we'd urge them in the first instance, if there is concern about flooding at their property, to go to a friend or family member. We will have evacuation centres opened. They are opened already, in fact. And we will have other areas where people can be safe while the event is on, if at the last minute they need refuge. The first thing they need to do is go to the city dashboard. If they just Google dashboard Gold Coast, there's a link that will come up and it shows the flood modelling for a couple of different scenarios. So we've prepared as thoroughly as we possibly can so that people know even if a little tiny bit of water is going to cross their property or what the full extent might be in the very worst case scenario.
I want to ask you about wind gusts, which are predicted to be up to 155 kilometres per hour in the worst moments. What can people do now, with a bit of time, to protect themselves and the area around them?
Yeah, so it's important that they stay safely in their homes, and there's not a lot we can do. We've urged people all week to bring any outdoor furniture inside. If they live in a high-rise unit, bring it in off the balcony, and please secure anything that might be capable of becoming a missile. So anything that's loose in your backyard, get it inside.
Are you concerned about the integrity of the homes in the Gold Coast area?
I guess we won't really know until the event happens and where it actually crosses. At the moment, they're still saying between Caboolture and the Tweed, but more likely between Caboolture and the Gold Coast. I guess we have some old beach shacks that might be vulnerable. I'm hoping that with the renewal that we've experienced, that homes have been built to Australian standards and that they will withstand this cyclone. It's a matter of wait and see, unfortunately, but we just want people to stay as safe as they possibly can. If they live in low-lying areas, be ready to evacuate, have the things you need together, even your jewellery and your special items. Get it together so that you're ready to leave if necessary.
When we consider the things that will happen all at the same time, you could get high winds, you'll get high rainfall, up to 800 mils over 3 days. Is it the wind you're more afraid of, concerned about, or the flooding?
The biggest problem we have is that this is likely to hit when we have a high tide. The high tide is the concern at the same time as we get the heavy rainfall and winds. And we're led to believe that tomorrow will be a simply awful day for wind gusts and for rainfall. And the high tide, I think, is late tomorrow night, with the crossing so far predicted to be on Friday morning early. So the combination of all those things are what's making this a scary thing for the Gold Coast.
Is there anything more people can do in terms of sandbagging or preparation before early Friday morning?
The sandbag stations are now closed. We have all of our staff at home, working from home tomorrow. All non-essential services within the City of Gold Coast Council have been ceased. The airport is closed. I just saw that the Star has told staff not to come to work tomorrow and Friday. Schools are shut. There's no public transport of any nature from tomorrow. So pretty well the city is shutting down in anticipation, and we have everything crossed that we'll have a better outcome than is anticipated.
And just to clarify that, if someone is concerned about staying in their home, it's better now to stay at home than to try and seek refuge elsewhere, or is there still time to move tonight?
Well, there's still time to move tonight. It hasn't erupted here yet. It's looking a little windy and a little gloomy, but at the moment we don't have any heavy rainfall, but there is very heavy rainfall predicted for later this evening. So we're not trying to be alarmist in any way, but there is not one modelling scenario that provides a good outcome at this point in time for the Gold Coast.
Donna Gates, we wish you all the best. We'll be watching very closely, and all of you in our hearts all through the next few days. Thank you.
Thank you so much.